Hello, lovelies. You know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! You know what time it is. Yes. I am back with Storytime with Chris. Let me make sure my phone notifications is off, so we don't need anyone interrupting. And that's totally fine. Like I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max relaxing, chillaxing time, mean time, in between time, scheme time, homework time, break time, study time, CP time, anytime that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and many, many more in between. I paused there for a second because I forgot what to say. I'm so sorry. Here's the thing. I'm from Cleveland. We talk very fast. Very fast. Even when I talk on the phone at work, I'm always like, thank you for calling Ellie's Restaurant at Mills Park Hotel. This is Chris speaking. How can I help you? Like, I talk very fast. I can't slow down. I can't really do it. I can't slow down. I gotta tell it like it is. I mean, I did have one of my regular customers be like, can you say that a little slower? I was like, hi, thank you for calling Ellie's at the Mills Park Hotel. This is Chris. How can I help you today? That's so slow. I gotta be fast. In the words of Sonic the Hedgehog, gotta go fast. So, I mean, growing up, even though I lived in Georgia for 9 years, most of my upbringing in childhood is from Cleveland, and I grew up around a lot of people that talk very fast. So you had to pay attention. And living in the South, people could, and especially in Atlanta, people could definitely tell where I was from by the way I talked. They're like, oh no, I know you ain't from here. I was like, how do you mean? You talk so proper. And I was like, I guess. But no judgment. Everybody's different. It's good to have different accents, different dialects, different ways of speaking. That's what makes us unique. It's a beautiful thing. And if we all talk the same and have the same dialects and same accents, life would get pretty stale and mundane after a while. It'd be very droll. A word which here means mundane, dry, and incredibly boring. We don't want that. In the words of Marnie's grandmother from Halloween Town, Marnie, being normal is vastly overrated. Which it is. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the last time we were here, we did lose one of our main characters. King Rune of the Isle of Mona gave up his life so that he could act as a decoy and a distraction in order for our heroes to win against the siege against King Smoit's castle and his soldiers. So he unfortunately died from an arrow wound, and not to sound morbid, kids, but we've read Peter Pan on this channel. We've read Peter Pan, and if you remember that story, there's a moment when Peter says to Hook and even to Wendy, he says, to die would be an awfully big adventure. Because for him, to pass on, to die, especially you are doing it for the right reasons and doing it to help people, which is a form of martyrdom. When you give up your life for the sake of somebody else, that is a gift and a superpower that is not easily obtained, and not a lot of people understand the significance of such a sacrifice. There's a lot of examples of that in stories. There's a lot of examples of that in movies where the main character will sacrifice themselves in order to save the greater good, or to save the life of the one, or whoever may it be in this case. Let me give another example. Well, actually, for those who love the MCU, not me so much, but for those who love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, everybody remembers Endgame. Spoiler alert for those who don't know. Tony Stark literally gives up his life to use the Infinity Gauntlet to defeat and destroy Thanos and all of his minions and restore the proper timeline to a point, not completely, but he's like, I'm inevitable, and he does have the glove on. You turn around and see Tony Stark like, and I am Iron Man, and he snaps, and that snap, the energetic pulse of that was too much for his mortal body, and he gave up his life to save the lives of so many people. That type of self-sacrificing for the greater good is, like I said, a superpower. But enough of that. Just want to really hone in and define what I was talking about. Chapter 8. The Messengers. From the moment he left Caer Dallben, Ka had flown directly toward Anuvin. Though it was the bird's pleasure aloft to revel in the limitless reaches of the sky, to swoop and soar above the white sheep-flocks of clouds, he now put aside all temptation to sport with the wind and held steadily to his course. Far below, Averin glinted like a long trickle of molten silver. Fallow fields spread in patches. The treetops rose black and leafless, broken by dark green stretches of pine forest following the curves of the hills. Ka pressed ever northwestward, resting seldom during the hours of daylight. Only at dusk, even when the crow's keen eyes could not search beyond the gathering shadows, did he drop to earth and find haven among the branches of a tree. Days he flew high above the clouds to profit from the wind tides that bore him swiftly as a leaf in a stream. But as he pressed over the forest of Idris, drawing closer to the harsh peaks of Anuvin, Ka checked his gliding flight and drove earthward, alert for any stirring among the mountain passes. Shortly after, he glimpsed a column of heavy armed warriors marching northward. At close range, he saw them to be huntsmen of Anuvin. For a time he followed them, and when they halted amid the shrub and studded trees, flapped to a low branch and settled there, squawking at their cook fires. The huntsmen prepared their midday meal. The crow cocked his head and listened intently, but their muttered speech told him little until he heard the words, Caer Dathel. Ka shifted his position and cast about for a closer branch. One of the huntsmen, a brutish warrior garbed in bearskin, caught sight of the bird. Grinning cruelly at the chance for sport, the warrior reached for his bow and knocked an arrow to the string. Quickly he aimed and loosed the shaft. Rapid though the huntsman's movements were, the crow's sharp eyes followed them as quickly. Ka flapped his wings and dodged the arrow that went railing through the dead branches a little distance over his head. The huntsman cursed both his lost arrow and the crow, and made to draw again. Delighted with himself, jeering miraculously, Ka sped above the trees, intended to circle back and find a safer listening spot. It was then the Gwythates appeared. For an instant, bent on returning to the huntsman's cap, Ka did not see the flight of 3 huge birds. From a bank of clouds that plunged downward in a rush of black beating wings, Ka's self-satisfaction vanished. The crow veered from their attack and strove desperately to climb higher, not daring to allow the deadly creatures to command the air above him. The Gwythates, too, swiftly veered. One broke from his fellows to pursue the fleeing crow. The others, with powerful strokes of their wings, rose toward the clouds to renew their assault. Ka forced himself ever upward, and the Gwythate gained only slightly when the crow burst through a sea of mist into a sun-swept vastness that nearly blinded him. The other 2 Gwythates were waiting. Shrieking in fury, they dropped toward him. Behind the crow, his pursuer drove him closer to the oncoming creatures. Ka glimpsed the flash of glistening beaks and blood-red eyes. The Gwythate's screams of triumph ripped the entire sky. The crow suddenly checked his flight, feigning confusion. When the Gwythates were nearly upon him, he summoned all his strength in a single lunge that carried him beyond the talons, slashing like daggers. The crow had not gone unscathed. One of the Gwythates had struck him beneath the wing. Despite the pain that dizzied him, Claw fluttered free of his attackers. The open sky was no refuge for him. No longer could he rely on swiftness of flight to save him. He plunged earthward. The Gwythates were not outwitted. The scent of blood had maddened them, and they would not be deprived of their kill. They streaked after the crow to overtake and prevent him from reaching the forest below. In the words of a certain rabbit, turned into a bird, well, it never pays to get out of the nest. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, anybody remembers watching the TV series of Winnie the Pooh? If you know, you know. You know what I'm talking about. Specifically the episode where Piglet has to go defeat a dragon and Rabbit ends up being a wizard that does terrible spells, and one of the spells turns him into a bird, and he's like, well, it never pays to get out of the nest. And in Ka's case, it didn't pay for him to be eavesdropping on enemy conversation. The highest trees rose up toward Ka. He avoided them to drop closer to the underbrush. The tangle of branches slowed his pursuers. Without slackening speed, Ka skimmed above the ground, deeper and deeper into the maze of bushes. The huge wings of the Gwythates, which had served so well aloft, now kept them from their prize. They screamed in rage, but made no attempt to venture farther into the woods. The crow, like a fox, had gone to earth. The day had begun to fade. Ka settled himself painfully for the night. At dawn he fluttered cautiously to a treetop. The Gwithates had gone, but his senses told him he had been driven far east of Anuvan, stiffly. He launched himself from the tree and flapped his way aloft. Southward, Caer Cardarn lay beyond the reach of his ebbing strength. He must decide quickly, while life still remained to him. Caw circled once, then flew heavily toward his new goal and his only hope. His flight was now a constant torment. Often his wings faltered, and only the wind tides held him aloft. He could no longer travel a full day's distance. Long before sundown, his wound forced him to alight and hide himself amid the trees. Nor could he fly closer to the sun's warmth, but made his way only a little above the ground, nearly brushing the treetops. Below him the countryside was springing to life with warriors both on horseback and afoot. During the times he halted to husband his strength, he leaned their destination like that of the huntsman, was the fortress of the sons of dawn. His alarm grew sharper than his pain, and he flew onward. He halted to husband his strength, to conserve his strength. Husband can be used as a verb. It's an older usage of the verb, but it is a thing. At length, in the numbing cold of the mountains northeast of the river Ystrad, he dimly spied what he had been seeking. Surrounded by sheer walls of cliffs, the valley was a green nest amid the snow-capped summits. A small cottage came into sight. The blue surface of a lake flashed in the sunlight. Against the protected side of a hill slope stretched a long, boat-like shape. The vessel's ribs and timbers overgrown with moss, beating his wings feebly, Caw dropped like a stone into the valley. He was vaguely aware, as his eyes closed, of jaws firmly about him, lifting him from the grass, then a deep voice asking, "Now, Brynach, what have you brought us?" The crow knew nothing more. When he opened his eyes again, he lay upon a soft nest of rushes in a sunny chamber. He was weak, but his pain had left him. His wound had been bound up. As he feebly fluttered his wings, a pair of strong hands deftly reached out to hold and calm him. "Gently, gently," said a voice. "Excuse me. I fear you will be earthbound for a time." The man's white-bearded face was as gnarled and weathered as an ancient oak in a snowdrift. White hair hung below broad, knotted shoulders, and a blue gem sparkled from the golden band circling his brow. Caw, without his customary squawking and jabbering, humbly bowed his head. Never before had he flown to this valley, but his heart had always known such a refuge waited him. A secret sense, like some hidden memory, he shared with all of the forest creatures of Predain, had guided him unerringly, and the crow understood he had come at last into the abode of Medwyn. Which, if you remember from previous books, Medwyn was a character we met during the events of the Black Cauldron. Actually... So, let's backtrack for real quick. So, we actually met Medwyn technically in the Book of Three, which is the first book in the series, but we do see him again in the Black Cauldron for a very brief moment. Let me see. Medwyn continued, knitting his heavy brows and searching of something long stored in a corner of his mind. You would be... Yes, the family likeness is unmistakable. Caw, son of Cadwer. Yes, of course. Forgive me for not recognizing you immediately, but there's so many crow clans I sometimes get them mixed. I knew your father when he was a spindly-legged fledgling. Medwyn smiled at his own recollections. The rogue was no stranger to my valley. A broken wing... excuse me. To be mended, a leg out of joint, one scrape after the other. I hope you do not follow his example, Medwyn added. I've already heard much of your bravery, and at a certain bent, shall we say, for boisterousness, it has reached my ears as well that you serve an assistant pigkeeper at Caer Dallben. Melilas is his name, I believe. No, forgive me. That is his steed, of course, Melilas, son of Melangar. The pigkeeper's name escapes me at the moment, but no matter. Serve him faithfully, son of Cadwer, for his heart is good. Among all the race of men, he was of the few I allowed within my valley. As for you, I judge you and the Gwithates have been at close quarters. Have a care. Many of Aurorn's messengers rove aloft these days, but you are safe now, and will soon be up and winging. Perched on the back of Medwyn's chair, an enormous eagle studied the crow. Beside the old man, the wolf Brynach sat on his haunches, lean and gray with yellow eyes. He wagged his tail and grinned up at the crow. A moment later, another wolf, smaller with a white blaze on her breast, trotted in and crouched beside her mate. Ah, Briaviel, said Medwin, have you come to greet our visitor? Like his father, no doubt he will have a bold tale to tell us. Ka spoke then in his own tongue, which Medwin easily understood. The old man's features turned gray as he listened. When the crow had finished, Medwin was silent for a time, deeply frowning. Brynoch whined uneasily. It is come, Medwin said heavily. I should have so guessed, for I sense a strange fear among the animals. More and more find their way here, fleeing what they themselves only dimly know. They tell of huntsmen abroad in force, and armed men. Now I understand the meaning of these tidings. The day I had ever feared has come upon us, yet my valley cannot hold all who would seek refuge. Medwin's voice had begun to rise like a wrathful gale. The race of men face the slavery of Anuvin. So too the creatures of Prydain in the shadow of the land of the dead. The nightingale's song will choke and die. The galleries of badgers and moles will become prison houses. No beast, no bird will roam or fly with the joy of a free heart. Those who are not slain, theirs will be the fate of the Gwithates. Long ago made captive, tormented, broken, and their once gentle spirits twisted to Arorn's vile ends. Medwin turned to the eagle. You, Edurnian, kind of sounds like Endymion, and it's kind of spelled similar that way for those who are familiar with Greek fairy tales. Edurnian, fly swiftly to the mountain eyries of your kindred. Bid them rise up in all their strength and all their numbers. You, Brynoch, and you, Briaviel, he commanded as the wolves perked up their ears. Spread the alarm among your own brethren, among the bears with paws to smite and arms to crush, among the sharp-antlered stags and all forest dwellers large and small. Medwin had risen to his full height. His hands clenched as tree roots clutched the earth. The crow watched, awestruck and silent. Medwin's eyes flashed, and his deep voice came as a wave of thunder. Speak to them in my name, and tell them such are the words of one who built a ship when the dark waters flooded Prydain, of one who bore their ancient sires to safety. Now against this evil flood, each nest, each lair must be a stronghold. Let every creature turn tooth, beak, and claw against all who will serve Arorn Deathlord. Side by side, the wolves loped from the cottage, and the eagle took flight. War! Hoo! Ha! What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, yeah! War! Hoo! Ha! What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Listen, this is a story about an upcoming war. Let me tell you something, kids. Though we read these stories of fantastical proportions and natures therein, war is not something to celebrate. War is not something that is fun. We are currently having wars in this world, specifically across the other side of the hemisphere. It is not fun. Lots of innocent lives are put at risk. Lots of egotistical people are talking about it or performing what I consider to be performative activism for it. But how do we face war? In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we must fight hate with love. We don't need bottles or guns or knives. We don't need Molotov cocktails. We must fight hate with love. And that's the weapon I choose. That's the weapon a lot of these characters are choosing. Even though it's not pretty to protect your home, unite under the power of love, of friendship, of loyalty, and everything will turn out all right in the end. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.